Hello and welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Scott. I'm Scott Rajavori with Titus Contracting, and this time we take to talk about hot topics in our industry, residential and commercial remodeling. We're passionate about what we do here at Titus, and we love talking about it. So we continue to come up with little topics, short topics we can discuss that may interest you, or maybe bring you some information you didn't otherwise have, or maybe even just differentiate between different items like we're going to be doing today. Today we're going to be talking about something that's really hot here in Minnesota, and that's porches. We have a little bird here in Minnesota known as the mosquito, and what we've learned in Minnesota is that if you can't beat them, run away from them or hide. So where do we hide? We hide in porches. So we can still be outside, but stay away from those pesky little critters when they come out in the evening. So there are three actual different types of porches for the most part. There's an open porch that wouldn't do much about mosquitoes, and those are popular as well. But we're going to talk about screen porches, 3-season porches, and 4-season porches over the next couple weeks. Today we're going to really focus on screen porches and what we're seeing in screen porches. And right now it's just been crazy porch-wise. People are putting on porches. It's one of our big things we're called out to look at right now. So things to consider with screen porches. First of all, it's the finish. Do you want it to look like it's part of the home? Do you want it to look completely separate and rustic? Do you want to have complete airflow coming through? So some people will put in partial walls, because if you're above 30 inches above grade, for safety reasons, you have to have a minimum of 36 inches of protection. So are you going to put railings on this? Are you going to put half walls? Because the screen can't go down to the floor without protection if you're too high. A lot of times what we're seeing now is people doing things like the PGT 4-track system. I've included it, I think, a link to it on our site. This is really a neat system. I'm going to show you a picture of a home done with it. That's this right here. You see that they look like they're windows. They actually are. They're vinyl windows, but they actually lift up so that all three of the lower windows, or any of the windows, actually can combine into one window, kind of like a double hung window, but it's 4 units, so that you have maximum airflow. Yet if it's cooler out, like we can have here in Minnesota and anywhere in the north, you can still use the porch. If it's raining, you can use the porch. So that's one system that we use. Also in porches, we find that people can use or will use slider windows. So those are the ones that slide sideways, not up and down. And you can remove the vinyl window portion and just leave the screen in as well. So it even maybe makes it more year-round use potentially than you would if you had just screens in the porch itself. So those are some things. Another thing we're doing a lot, seeing a lot, is fireplaces, like wood burners or even fire pits in porches. Often fans. There's electrical out there, lighting. So things to consider there, of course, there are requirements for a wood burning fireplace in order to vent it properly, to keep it from being too close to combustibles. So those are things to consider, and how high the vent has to go and whatnot. But one thing about the wood burning is that one of the things that differentiates between different porches is heat. So because it uses wood, that's not considered a system that's connected to your mechanical system, so you don't run into issues with potentially being considered living space. So another thing that we do once in a while, not so often anymore, but still a popular item, is hot tubs. Because you can't use a hot tub if the mosquitoes are too bad, or it's uncomfortable, or if it's raining, it extends the use of the hot tub. We put hot tubs in porches, but really need to think about that, because there's a lot of weight in a hot tub, and the inspection department may let your porch slide by with the way you have the structure built, but it may not be set up to contain that kind of weight. So if that's something you're considering, talk to your contractor about it. Make sure they understand that you're going to have that extra weight in there, so they can put in the appropriate footings, appropriate joists to support that. Also, you want to consider getting electrical out there, and and drainage and access and all those things. Sometimes people do these things as afterthoughts. So we want to make sure we consider that. One last thing I'll bring up is often people want to enclose the bottom of their deck. So if you've got a deck and you've got the post going up, they want to put screen between the posts. Be careful. There are probably some contractors that will do this for you, but what you need to consider is that if there's a floor below that, if it's a concrete floor, that concrete moves in Minnesota. We have frost, the concrete moves up, anything to attach to it moves up, anything attached to those posts stays stationary. There are ways to get around this, to get rolling screens and whatnot. There are ways to just leave flaps for the screen that aren't quite as attractive, but be careful about that. I get asked this question all the time. Well, can I just put, a screen porch underneath my deck? And we won't do it if it shouldn't be done. So just be cautious about that. So next week, we're going to talk about 3-season and 4-season porches, the differences, why one person would use one over another, and how it might affect you financially. So thanks again for joining us for What's Hot with Scott. We look forward to talking with you next week. Again, I'm Scott Rajabori with Titus Contracting, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
Oh,
He was-
Lord.